Good afternoon and welcome to the Missions, the place where we have some respite from coronarisms, although that is becoming a little less of an issue, which is a huge relief. It's good to see people in a better frame of mind everywhere, really, and a palpable sense of being positively engaged with new possibilities. That's the way it seems. Anyhow, we're still here. We'll still do the programs for the time being. And I only just got back from work and I haven't really put any thought into it, but that's not unusual. That's the way it is here. It's a serendipitous something. Anyhow, well, what do we have? We do have one record on the table. And before I engage with that, I'll just remind you that we are testing here on 160 metres in the narrowband FM mode, and that we are simultaneously streaming online. So if you go to the YouTube channel under my call sign, that is vk3sl, you'll find that there is a dedicated space where we stream every day at this time, and also there's an archive of past missions. If you weren't aware, last night we had some progressive, well, it wasn't rock, it was progressive pop, insofar that we heard Beyonce, and that was care of Olivia, who had some Beyonce LPs. So it was great to play some recently released LPs. So how about that? It's all coming around. What goes around comes around, or something to that effect. But yes, nostalgia rules. Anyhow, what we'll do now is cut to the chase, and am I ready to go? I think so. It is a Parlophonium on the turntable, and we're switched in now. And this happens to be a recording of Mr. Bell, some Australian local talent, Graham Bell, and I think he's playing a piano solo on this, and I believe it is Rocking Horse Rag. vk3sl. Graham Bell, and that was Rocking Horse Rag. Well, we'll continue now with something interesting, a scarce Australian rarity, a world record, in fact, an unbreakable disc record on a flexi disc, manufactured in Melbourne in 1927-ish, I think, thereabouts, and late 20s. And these were made by Mr. 3PB, and it was a part of the world record enterprise. They put out some flexi records, mainly overseas releases, but it's got a great label. In fact, if I had a T-shirt made up, I think this would be the best image to have on a T-shirt. It's a picture of a biplane skittling records out from the plane into the ether, and the records sort of, that's the sort of the unbreakable theme, and there's a big sort of unbreakable records and an arch. It's hubris. It's fantastic. Anyhow, these were produced in 225 Bay Street in North Brighton, and they are quite rare. You don't see them very often. So we'll sample two of them now, and as I think they came from the Edison Bell or the Banner catalogue or something. I think that's the background, but two tracks, and what is it? Oh, Maybe It's You, and the other one is It's a Million to One, You're in Love, I think. That's the name of the song. So let's have a listen to a rare Australian disc, a flexible, unbreakable aeroplane record. vk3sl, testing.
Making me blue, maybe it's you. Ooh, what would I do if it were you making me blue? I went and had my fortune read. Someone's to blame, the gypsy said, but she wouldn't say who. Maybe it's you making me blue, maybe it's you. million to one you're in love. When you go for a walk and you talk, baby, talk, it's a million to one you're in love. When you tell her the wonderful things that you've done, make her believe she is second to none, and you promise her everything under the sun, it's a million to one you're in love.
You've been listening to two selections from the Bell catalogue from 1927, as issued on an Australian aeroplane record, Unbreakable disc. It's sort of a composite plastic record, and the track we just heard, Al Friedman's orchestra, I think was Nathan Glantz and his orchestra, and the earlier one was the Melody Men, and not sure who they are. Al Friedman. I think it's Al Friedman. Anyhow, it won't mean much to anybody. But, yes, interesting story is the 3PB story and the Enterprise at 225 Bay Street in North Brighton. We'll refer that one to Mr. L. I'm sure he can provide a lot more context. But you see, they don't turn up very often. But these Unbreakable aeroplane records are just a fascinating little Australian enterprise. And, great design. I just love the look of the label. It's got both tracks listed on the front in two circles. And, as I said before, a picture of a plane with throwing discs out. Unbreakable records. Nathan Glantz recorded on a lot of small labels. You see him under many pseudonyms, according to the discographies. But quite a fine band. All right, there we have it. That's a bit of a rarity to kick off today. And now we'll have a listen to something from Mr. Techmoan. I haven't played one of his little docos for a while, but one of them captured my imagination. It's about the tapette. I'm sort of feeling a bit tape-oriented at the moment. I'm considering going under the house and digging out my 500-odd cassettes to start going through them all, maybe over summer. And I think I need more than one cassette recorder. I've got a good Pioneer cassette recorder I use in the booth here, which serves me very nicely, but it would be good to have one in the house. And I picked up a TEAC V80 three-head machine off the council cleanup in really good condition not long ago. Sort of classic bit of tape fare from the 80s, tape machine. And I'd like to get it going, so I'm thinking about belts. And I know I've had discussions with Mr. F before about belts, and I think the Wes catalogue's the way to go. So I'm going to do some research and find out what belt is required for the V80. And while I'm at it, I might have a go at restoring an A450, a TEAC A450, a very nice looking cassette deck with two big VU meters on the front. And I might try and find somewhere in the booth because it looks very, very official. And I think it'd be fun to get that going. So I might start resurrecting cassette decks and sampling the collection. So there we have it. And while I was doing my research today, came Mr. Techmoan with one of his latest, and it's all about the tapette or tapette, and an interesting medium that was surprisingly common, but for particular reasons. So I'll let him explain it all, and we'll have a listen now. This is VK3sl. I've got to use the gongs more often. It gives an air of authenticity to these missions. vk3sl.
I'm guessing that you're familiar with one of these, the compact cassette, first introduced in the 1960s, but now let me show you another audio tape format. This is a tapette, again introduced in the 1960s. You might assume this is one of those failed formats that came and went in the blink of an eye, but no, the tapette was used by tens of thousands of people around the world all the way into the early 2000s, and yet despite that, it's highly likely you've probably never seen one before. But then again, even some of the people who use this might not have been familiar with how it looked, as this was the format primarily used for talking books for the blind. It wasn't just sight-impaired people who use these, though. There's all sorts of reasons why someone might not be able to turn the pages of a book or comprehend the text that's on them. The RNIB was, however, the primary organisation in the UK that used these tapes, and the images and dates shown here are from the Talking Book History section of their website. Their Talking Book service started in the mid-1930s, first utilising 24 RPM narrow-grooved shellac records, and a typical book would take up both sides of 10 discs. But books continued to be issued on various different forms of records, most commonly at 16 RPM, until they started phasing them out in the 1960s with the introduction of the first talking book magnetic tape format. Designed by the UK firm Clark & Smith, this early machine was a pioneer in multi-track cartridge formats. The cartridge used a half-inch magnetic tape which held up to 18 tracks and could contain up to 20 hours of recording. The disadvantage of this system, of course, though, was the size and weight of those cartridges. Each one was about £6 in weight. As it was a library service, the cartridges were sent back after being listened to, but they were too big to fit in a postbox, so a special delivery service had to be arranged for them. Apparently these cartridges earned the nickname Talking Bulk. So unsurprisingly, a new, more compact system was needed and indeed introduced by Clark & Smith again in 1966, and that's our tapette. These cartridges could easily fit through a letterbox or in a postbox, and indeed an arrangement was made so they could travel back and forth through the postal system in the UK for free. This system remained in use until the early 2000s. Now, I've wanted to feature these for quite a while, but there's been a bit of a snag. It's a library service, everything's loaned out, the machines and tapes, you're not supposed to have them after the agreement's been finished. I have, though, seen quite a few machines left out in the wild over the years, perhaps from when the service discontinued, but the tapes for them, well, they seem to have all been returned back to the RNIB. Nevertheless, a year ago I decided to buy a machine I saw on eBay that was advertised at a very fair price and looked to be in remarkably good condition, in the hope that one day I'd be able to find some tapes to play on it. You can see from the service stickers on the back of the machine that this was last inspected in March 2000, so this one was being used right up until the end of the tapette era. Now, I just needed some tape cartridges, but until they showed up, I filed this thing away in my storage locker under pending. But then a couple of months ago, I was contacted by a chap called Alexander who lives in the Orkney Islands. He mentioned he was going through some old things and came across this unusual tape machine. He thought I might be interested in it, and he had a couple of tapes to go with it. After a bit of back and forth, it turned out that it was one of these machines. I told him to hang on to his machine, but I'd be very happy if he could loan me his tapes. And here they are. This is one book which is spread across 2 tapes. Each of these cartridges is capable of holding 13 hours of audio, which is split across 6 tracks, and they use standard 1/4-inch tape. So now I finally get to try out my machine for the first time. The first thing to mention is the interference you hear is coming from my nearby Wi-Fi router. I would have switched it off, but the missus is remote working from home on her computer now because of all this pandemic, so I couldn't do that. But that's not the only issue with this. I noticed the tape isn't engaging with the playhead unless I hold it at an odd angle.
And showed him into a room with a comfortable elbow chair, his wig and coat off.
Now, just looking at the machine for the moment, though, the design is quite industrial, and it looks very much like something from another era. Certainly not something that you'd still see in daily use in the year 2000. Now, you'll see controls on here for play and rewind, tone and volume, and there's a headphone output for when you don't want to use the internal speaker, and then there's finally the track change lever. Pressing this moves the position of the head upwards on the tape until it reaches the top, at which point a bell sounds and then it drops back down to the bottom, so it's on track 1. I wanted to get it to play properly, so first port of call was to open up one of the cartridges. The tape inside looks to have a bit of mould on the edges, but nothing too serious. The tape path in here is quite normal, it's just spooling from one reel to the other and getting exposed while it travels across the front of the cartridge. In the centre of the cartridge though, we've got a spring-loaded pinch roller which pushes against the inside of the tape, and this is flanked on either side by a pressure pad, and unsurprisingly these pads have rotted away. So after scraping off the remnants of these, I replaced the pads with the same plastic-coated foam strip that I've used in the past to repair 8-track cartridges. I'm hoping this is going to help keep the tape in contact with the playhead. So once I reassembled the cartridge, I popped it back into the machine to see if there was any improvement.
A few boys show any interest in modern languages. I remember thinking it strange this time last year when you asked...
So yes, that's a lot better. And also notice that there's an auto stop at the end of the tape. Now one feature that took me by surprise though was what happens while the tape is being rewound.
E2. E1. A2. A1. Stop.
Yeah, there's an audible index that enables the listener to accurately locate their position on the tape. One thing I was a bit confused about though was this track selector. It seemed to operate intermittently, didn't always jump to the next track, it seemed to skip every now and then. So I wanted to open up the machine to lubricate the mechanism. I also wanted to deoxidise the volume pot as it crackled when it was adjusted. Now once I got this open, I could get a better look at the mechanism inside, so I greased a few points and also cleaned that head and the rollers. But I couldn't access the volume potentiometer from this side, so I needed to take the chassis out of the case to get to the underneath. You can see a couple of stickers inside here dating from 1993 and 2000, and reading up, Clark & Smith had the RNIB tied into this system far longer than they really wanted to be. As other lines of the Clark & Smith Electronics Company dried up, they came to rely more and more on this lucrative contract with the RNIB, which included the regular servicing of these old out-of-date machines. Of course, there were a number of versions of this particular device from the 1960s original onwards, but this appears to be the last revision, with this amplifier being introduced in 1988. The bell you hear when the head has reached its limits and returns to the beginning is actually the sound of a clapper hitting the outside edge of the main flywheel. For something that was made in the 1990s, there are parts of the construction, like this wooden plywood surround to the speaker, that echo back to a much earlier time. But now that I've cleaned and lubricated everything, I'll put it all back together and let you listen to a direct feed of the audio that I've recorded away from this electrical interference.
Track 1 begins immediately. The Launching of Roger Brooke by Dennis Wheatley. By kind permission of the publisher, the Hutchinson Publishing Group. This book, first published in 1947, is copyright. The copyright owners have allowed this book to be recorded without fee by the British Talking Book Service for the Blind, 224 Great Portland Street, London, England. No unauthorized broadcasting, public performance or copying is permitted. It is read by Garrard Green. There are 26 chapters. If this recording becomes damaged in any way, please put a large cross on the address card before turning it over, and the letter R if a replacement copy is required. Chapter 1. The Happiest Days, query. White-faced and tense, his blue eyes smouldering under their dark lashes, young Roger Brooke
is a test
glared at the older, much sturdier lad who stood grinning at him in the narrow corridor.
Now we've got to go back to the crackly audio for a second, I'm afraid, but I'm playing this section as it helps to explain how the tracks on the tape are configured.
One of the panes of the conservatory door. That's the end of track 1. At the end of this announcement, move the control lever to off. Remove the cassette, turn it over, and replace it in the machine. Then press the track change button once. Do this now. Track 2 begins shortly. Track 2 begins shortly.
Now, it turns out there was nothing wrong with that track selection mechanism. It's only designed to move the head once for every 2 presses. It took me quite a while to piece this all together, but here's how I think the tracks are laid out on the tape. Now, first I'd like to mention the tracks are too narrow and or too faint to show up on my magnetic tape viewer. But second, I'm borrowing these cartridges, so I don't want to rethread the tapes and try playing them on another machine to figure this out for sure. But we can figure things out in other ways. First, the tape head has 3 play positions. Each second press of the track lever moves the head up 1 notch. However, that's not all. When the tape's being rewound, you can hear the other track that's playing the index markers. And depending upon the side of the tape you're listening to, these either count up or count down.
D6.
So here's how I think the tracks are laid out. There are actually 8 tracks on this tape when you include the index. But if you imagine the green circle is the playhead, that'll start off towards the centre of the width of the tape, playing track 1. But when you reach the end of that side of the tape, you flip it over, press that track advance button, which doesn't move the head at all on the first press, but with the head in the same position, you're now playing track 2. So at the end of track 2, you flip the cartridge again, but at this point the head is still in that same position to play track 1. But one press of the button now moves the head up 1 notch, so it's in the position to play track 3, and so on it continues. Now, if at any time you engage rewind, the head moves to its uppermost position, which plays the audio from the index track, which on this picture I put along each side of the outer edge of the tape. But I've got second thoughts about this, because I'm sure at times while I was in rewind, as well as hearing the index being played normally, I could also hear a faint bleed through of the index playing in reverse, which would mean the tracks would have had to be next to each other, so that would have put them along the middle. And the playhead does look to have 2 pickup areas on it, the thinner one presumably being for the rewind. However, it's only got 2 wires coming from it. But anyway, regardless, you get the general idea. There are 8 tracks split into 2 lots of 4 running in either direction. The tapette cartridge format outlasted this particular machine because in 1996, 30 years after the introduction of the first model, Clark & Smith brought out a new, more compact and modern-looking device that could play the same tapes. But this particular device was short-lived, as the RNIB were anxious to move away from this old tape system into something more fitting for the 21st century. So in 2002 they introduced their new Digital Accessible Information System, or DAISY, which brought talking books into the digital age. The tapette, though, it really had a long run, far longer than the RNIB really wanted. They were looking at alternatives as far back as the 1980s, but the costs were just way beyond what a charity could afford to fund. So just like the compact cassette, it started off in the 1960s, but it survived into the new millennium. Surviving examples of these old talking book machines are now museum exhibits, whether as seen on this display from the RNIB or at Vision Australia's museum. But nowadays, audiobooks are commonplace, with many people choosing to listen to a book just out of preference rather than necessity. It's interesting, though, to remember why talking books were developed in the first place. Everybody should be able to enjoy a good book, and thanks to technology and the work of charities, one of the physical barriers that would have prevented some people from doing just that has been eliminated. Anyway, that's it for the moment. As always, thanks for watching.
That's the end of cassette 1. Please replace this cassette in its container and return it to the library.
This is vk3sl. You've been listening to Mr. Techmoan's expose on the tapette. It's a format that intrigues me a bit because my grandfather used to record for the Institute for the Blind, and he recorded on similar machines. I seem to remember them being at his place. So interesting. Well, that's a topic to discuss with Frank and Jamie next time we're together. All right, so let's see what else is on the list. I'm going to just fade this out. And now we'll move over to our OTR list, and I think I have a Pepsodent show from 3AW. I haven't heard these before, so I'll fire one up, and we've got the gongs here. I might do it the other way around. There we go. vk3sl testing.
3AW Melbourne, Eastern Australian time is 8 o'clock. And here's the Pepsodent Show, featuring Isidore Goodman from the Capitol Theatre, Melbourne, and broadcast from 3AW to 22 stations in Victoria, New South Wales, Queensland, and South Australia. Pepsodent presents Sunday night at 8, with Terry Deer at the Comedy Theatre.
Pepsodent presents on Sunday night at 8 a potpourri, as you will see, of comedy and melody, all blended in a manner so fascinating. To tickle a taste, discriminating. Pepsodent presents on Sunday night at 8 an air review that's smart and new, designed for you and you and you. Cast away the blues and join the throng. Follow the crowd and join a happy song. Pepsodent presents a show that is right up to date. Sunday night at 8.
Happy smiles, everybody. Here's another Pepsodent Show Sunday night at 8 with Isidore Goodman and his band. The Parker Sisters, Orma Douglas, Dita Robinson, Alan Royal, Jumbo, Colonel Rock Bottom, Captain Pepper, and guest artist Bob Parrish. With Isidore Goodman of the band, we're on our way to the Quartermaster's stores. Stand from under, everybody, for here comes the Pepsodent Crazy Gang. Colonel Rockbottom, Captain Pepper, and Jumbo have just returned from a lightning trip to Sydney. A lightning trip. They were in the town 4 days and didn't strike it in the same place twice. Oh, yes, fellas, I was going to ask you, why did you go to Sydney?
Because it's so nice coming back to Melbourne.
Don't dingy walla, Jumbo. Haven't we told you not to be rude to Sydney listeners? Do you want to get us another pay cut?
As a matter of fact, sir, we went to Sydney to appear on the stage.
Oh, yes, and did you get a good reception?
Yes, sir. The whole audience was with us as we hurried out of town.
But joking aside, sir, it was wonderful in Sydney. What the fireworks, what a crowd, what a band.
What a bloomin' liar.
Oh, they gave us a marvellous reception, sir, marvellous. I was all choked up inside, but they finally cut me down.
We went to Sydney by plane, sir, and landed on the new airport.
Oh, yes, is that the place that used to be a swamp until they filled it in?
Yes, sir. It's wonderful what they can build on a garbage.
That's what the listeners keep telling us.
Tell me, when did you leave on your trip, Colonel?
Well, sir, we were going to fly over right after the show last Sunday, but the sponsor said that having us on the air twice in the one night was carrying a joke too far.
By the way, they told me that Sydney's quite a town.
Oh, yes, sir. It's very progressive, too. Everybody rushes around in taxi cabs to keep an appointment with someone who won't be there because he got hit by a taxi cab.
I see, so you're greatly struck by the Sydney taxis, were you?
Well, you don't think I was born with these skid marks on my pants, do you?
Where did you say, stay in Sydney, Colonel?
Or at the Hotel Hotfoot, sir.
Yes, sir, at the Hotel Hotfoot.
The good old Hotel Hotfoot.
Well, how many times did we say that, Mr. Dear?
3 times, Colonel Rockbottom.
Oh, there, that pays our bill.
Did you have fun in Sydney, Captain Pepper?
Yes, sir. I went into one of the nightclubs there and entered for a jitterbug contest.
Really? How did you get on?
I lasted 10 minutes. Then I was disqualified.
Bad luck, why?
One of my feet touched the floor.
Did you bring back anything from Sydney with you?
I tried to, sir, but her husband wouldn't let her come.
Oh, I brought back a new cocktail, sir. The Cyclone. They're so strong they only serve 2 to each customer.
Well, they must be strong, all right, Colonel.
Strong, sir? Why, I know a Saab and an officer who drank 8 and then walked home from St Kilda to Williamstown over the harbour bridge.
But, Colonel, there's no harbour bridge between St Kilda and Williamstown.
That didn't stop him, sir.
You say that you went to Sydney to appear on the stage.
Oh, that's right.
Of course, we've been on the stage before.
But this time, sir, we were outside the horse.
Yes, sir. It was such a pleasure to be able to do our act without a wagging.
Did you come back by plane?
Yes, Mr. Dear, sir, Mr. Dear. It was an old plane, and when we took off, the pilot went straight up in the air for 5 miles.
What was the big idea?
That's what we asked the pilot.
What did he say?
He said he had to get height before the elastics unwound.
Oh, he was a good pilot, though, sir, a good pilot. He had 1,000 hours air experience. He used to fill tires at a service station.
We wouldn't have worried, sir. Only the pilot was cross-eyed, and the wings agreed with him.
That must have worried you quite a bit, Captain Pepper.
It did, sir, it did. Finally, I said to him, don't you think we ought to have a parachute?
And what did he say then?
He said, listen, Dig, the people with parachutes jumped an hour ago.
Boy, oh boy, you must have been glad to get back.
You darn tootin' we were, sir. The first thing I did was to go down to the Pig and Whistle and say hello to the boy.
Ah, Colonel, that was a very, very nice gesture indeed.
Yes, sir. I'm going back there tonight. Maybe they'll say hello to me.
Well, as we say goodbye to the Colonel, let's hope his cronies at the Pig and Whistle will say hello to him this time. But there's one little lady who's always certain of an enthusiastic hello from us, and that's Nita Robinson, our blues singer. Here she comes now. Hello, Nita.
Hello, Terry.
Oh, my, you're looking nice tonight, Nita.
Thank you, Terry, but I think that's just a bit of pure blarney.
No, I really mean it. I'm going to say I like the song you've chosen for tonight, too. What is it again?
That proves you're kidding. I'm just going to sing all this in heaven, too.
Thanks.
You gave me your lips, and your lips were so heavenly. Stars in the sky were all free, and they shine for me. So does the moon in the blue. All this is mine, and heaven too. You gave me your love summer day, each mountain capped with snow, the sentimental tree, the dreamy streams that flow, every country lane and every street of stone are highways of adventure made for me alone. You gave me your love was a melody. Deep in my heart, I will carry the song with me. You bring a love so divine. All this is mine and heaven too. I own each summer day, each mountain capped with snow, the sentimental tree, the dreamy streams that flow, every country lane and every street of stone are highways of adventure made for me alone. You gave me your love was a melody. Deep in my heart, I will carry the song with me. You bring a love so divine. All this is mine and heaven
Thank you very much, Peter. There have been many foreign arrangements of Spanish folk music, but none, I think you'd agree, as stirring as Ravel's Bolero. When it first made its appearance, the Bolero, as it's commonly called, caused a sensation. This concert arrangement played by Isidore Goodman's orchestra is a sensation in itself. Listen.
Sunday night at 8, the baritone voice of Ormond Douglas has been heard to distinct advantage in ballads and patriotic songs, and perhaps none was better received than this, The Same Old Silver Lining.
The same old silver lining still shines in the same old sky. So pack up your troubles in your old kit bag as they did in the days gone by. Remember Tipperary, and though all the skies are gray, with the same old silver lining shining. God save the King and rule Britannia. Come on, everybody in the nation, a smile is what we need today. We have got the happy consolation, although the skies are gray. The same old silver lining still shines in the same old sky. So pack up your troubles in your old kit bag, as we did in the days gone by. Remember Tipperary, and though all the skies are gray, with the same old silver lining shining, God save the King and rule Britannia.
Those of you who have been listening regularly to Sunday Night at 8 know that we haven't spoiled your entertainment by introducing too much Pepsodent advertising. We have told you what the product is and what it does, and we've tried to be brief so as to give you as much entertainment as possible. Well, now, on the last night of the present series, we want to leave one definite thought with you. Remember, Pepsodent toothpaste is effective, is safe, and is truthfully advertised. Always, whenever you buy dentifrice, remember that Pepsodent toothpaste will do your teeth most good. That's all. If you want to get all the attractiveness you can, all the radiance and charm into your smile, you will use Pepsodent toothpaste regularly every night and every morning.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, Isidore Goodman, the star of this Pepsodent presentation, desires to say a few words to you.
Ladies and gentlemen, during the past 3 months, it has been my privilege to present to you each Sunday night at 8 a musical program which I trust you have enjoyed. In this, our final broadcast of the series, on behalf of the artists, the boys in the orchestra, and myself, I want to thank you all for your very kind appreciation of our efforts.
In response to numerous requests, Isidore Goodman has decided to give you tonight the immortal composition of George Gershwin, The Rhapsody in Blue.
This is a test transmission from vk3sl. Well, how about that? That was Israel Goodman with the 3AW Orchestra. And presumably it was the Pepsodent Show. A few episodes of the Pepsodent Show here, so we might feature another one soon. That was most interesting. He, of course, had a remarkable career, Mr. Goodman. And it must have been about the time he made those recordings for Diaphon in Sydney. I think he made that Romance and Rhythm series. Might have to find some of those to play. Isidore Goodman, South African pianist who came to Australia in the late 20s, I think. He was a young man. He came and got a lectureship at the Con, seem to remember, and sort of hung around and did amazing things. Remarkable pianist, just a very naturally gifted artist. And so there we have it. Some OTR with a bit of classical splashed in. Bit of a roughshod orchestra, but it was okay. It was good. Breakneck tempos. All right, let's continue now for the next little bit with a cello sonata. I wonder why I'm playing a cello sonata. This is one of my very faves. I have played this before, but I was just looking at the shelf and this record was beckoning to be played. It's from a compendium of recordings with Jacqueline Dupre and Daniel Baumboim. And they played this just so well. And it's one of my faves. It's an early Beethoven, a work he wrote in 1896, his Opus 5, number 1, I think. So, very early Beethoven, but just so full of melody and freshness and youthful exuberance. And I've played this work quite a lot in the past, and I just so love playing it. And I think it's nice to have a listen. So, off an LP. Now I'm reasonably confident, touch wood, that the SP10 is holding up. And where are the gongs? Where's the gonger? I can't find the mallet. What's happened to the gong mallet? I'll have to use something. Here we go, something else. This is not the right mallet though. I think they must be sitting on it. No, all right. Well, it's a bit percussive, isn't it? It doesn't have the same effluent roundness to it. Oh well, we'll find the gong soon. It's probably just kicking around somewhere. It's a bit of a mess in here. And let's kick off now with the Beethoven cello and piano sonata, Opus 5, number 1 in F major. vk3sl. Testing. transmission from vk3sl. This is a test transmission from vk3sl. Whoa, what a fantastic ending. What a sonata. What amazing youthful zest. And pity about the ident coming in just before the final statement, but that's what happens. And yeah, we've been listening to a recording of Jacqueline Dupre and Daniel Bauenboim, and youthful exuberance, youthful artists. It's just amazing recording. Okay, folks, that's it for today. Hopefully back tomorrow, and have a very good evening. This is VK3SL, testing on 160 and streaming online.